Greetings. Isn't today a great day to be a Pokemon trading card game fan? I've got Tera Box here today for you, and I personally haven't played the list myself, but I've got a guest here who has been and will offer insight wherever I stumble in talking about this list. If you want to say hey.
Hey.
She's a buddy of mine, and she's just going to weigh in more than I, because she has all the insight because she's been playing it. Too easy. So first, as usual, let's take a look at the list. Okay, so the inspiration for this list was toward Reklev's Tera Box. This is what this is, with some changes that we've made to better suit her playstyle. So she will now go through and mention some of the changes she made and give some whys. So if you want to go play the pure towards list, be our guest, but some of these changes might be ones that you would want to take under consideration. So if you can go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, first things looking in this deck, there's a lot going on. It's not a simple list for sure. I mean, it's built to be extremely variable, respond to different threats, a lot of different meta decks that are currently running around. Some of the changes that I made, Tord originally had Iron Thorns EX as well as a Monkey Dory in here. I took both of those out because I felt that they were not conducive to how I played. And I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of regretting getting rid of the Monkey Dory a little bit because I'm finding it hard to combat the current Gardevoir in the meta. And I do think that that would be helpful, adding in the Monkey Dory back. But we'll keep seeing how it goes and we'll go from there. So I did take out the Darkness Energy because I didn't have the Monkey Dory anymore. I didn't see a point in it. I did add in 2 energy retrievals because I felt that the deck needed a little bit more going into the discard pile rather than just a Night Stretcher. So that was another change that I made in place of the Iron Thorns and the Monkey Dory. I also changed the Wellspring Mask and Teal Mask Ogerpon count. In Tord's list, he had 2 Wellspring Masks in there. That change came about because of a slightly simpler reason. I only had 2 copies of Teal Mask Ogerpon physically in the house when I was making this deck. So I just swapped it, and I have found great success in that because, you know, I get that extra draw power. So I think that that was a good change, and I haven't felt the need to have more than 1 copy of the Wellspring Ogerpon in my deck. And beyond that, I don't think there's much else that I really did to change it.
Sounds good. Rather than get into the eaches of this deck right now, we just wanted to give you like the pure numbers we're working with, and we'll look under the hood of the deck a little bit more here in a moment. So here, if you've been seeing any of my other videos, this is what I call the flow of the deck. We have a quick look at what each of the outputs of our main Pokemon are, and then we're going to look at a quick snap of what my buddy here considers the proper setup, or the ideal setup, quote unquote. And then we're going to look at how some of the combos of the deck produces the effects and best utilizes some of these other cards. So we'll look over here first. I'm looking at Terapagos, Pikachu, Wellspring Ogerpon, and Clefairy EX. So you are going to be super familiar with these cards already do, but just for a quick overview, Terapagos EX has 2 outputs. That is an attack that, not on the first turn going second, it can be used, but it is an attack that does 30 damage for each bench Pokemon. Just yours, not your opponent's. That's a good combo with a Terra Stadium. And then it has the 180 damage, cannot be hurt by non-colorless basic Pokemon. The Terapagos EX deck lists that we're used to seeing only used the first attack, but this deck does use this ability, or use both attacks to great effect. And we'll get more on that when we start getting to the eaches. We got Pikachu EX here. You know and love it. Its abilities, it's not actually called Survive. I'd have some fun making this here, but its ability just says, hey, if it's going to get 1 shot, it doesn't get 1 shot, survives, and leaves with 1 damage left, and it has that 300 damage output, and it discards the 3 energy that might be attached to it. Wellspring is similar. It's a second attack, hits for 100, and if you want to, you can discard the 3 energy off of it and hit the bench for 120 damage. Its first attack is also super useful. 20 damage doesn't, the The opponent's Pokemon cannot retreat from the active. Clefairy EX, the newest card that is part of this deck, would be Clefairy EX. Its ability means it can hit Dragon Pokemon for weakness, and it's got that Full Moon Rondo, a throwback to when we had the Raikou, Kun, and yeah, they had their own Rondo attacks that for everyone's benched Pokemon, it does 20 damage. So that's pretty useful against setup decks and the dragon attacks. So that's pretty good. We have what we're calling the ensemble, the Bloodmoon. You know and love them. You know, the Bloodmoon EX, finishing out games for solid damage, free retreat for basics, good draw when someone's knocked out, and then a solid attacker in the list as well. But I threw MEWX into the ensemble because technically, more of the time you're using it to draw cards, but its free retreat and attack that can be used in various situations are also pretty useful. So not to discount that. I also put the Teal Ogerpon ZX down here. Again, most of the time you're using its ability to draw cards and accelerate grass energy into play, but its attack can be used to great effect depending on the list. You have your 4/4 Hoothoot Noctowls, you know and love them. If you have Tera Pokemon to play, you can go and find 2 cards, one involved. I made a joke that it's like Pidgeotting twice. You have a 2 of Fan Rotom. It technically says on their first turn you can go find 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less, but in this list you're using it to find your Hoothoots, Noctowls, and your Ditto. One of Ditto is super cool. Your first turn, it is in the active spot. You discard it and replace it with another basic Pokemon from your deck. So you have a plethora of supporters, many of you seen. 3 bosses orders, 1 of Research and Iono. Depending on the situation, my buddy here has said before that she doesn't often use the Iono, but sometimes that late game hand reception is all you need. Lots of Crispins. Actually, we'll get into very necessary to get energy into play. Sparkling Crystal is obvious. The energy count. So these kind of got messed up because Tabletop Simulator hates me, but you're looking at 2 lightning, 4 grass, 2 psychic, 1 metal, and 1 water energy. Those counts are important and they allow us to use our different Pokemon. There is most grass because it is both used as a draw support and for the Pikachu attack. 2 psychic.
And we can't forget the Terapagos either.
And it's used for the Terapagos as well, my bad. So that is a lot of effect in the deck. Psychic mostly affects just Clefairy EX, but because of the amount of Dragapult going around, we can't not have it because Sparkling Crystal can't be used. So that was a necessary 1/1. The 1 metal.
I do want to add, I replaced the Dark Energy with the Psychic because I thought I wanted to give myself just one more out in case things have ever gone bad. I've never actually used it, but Latias has the 200 attack. I have never used it, but I have the energy count to do it just in case I need it.
And for those of us that have played hundreds of games of Pokemon of the same deck, there will be a situation where someone needed that other psychic energy for that Latias EX, I guarantee you. So not a bad shout out for that. The 1 metal energy, water energy, 1 metal energy for the Pikachu EX, 1 for the Terapagos. That allows us to use them mostly for weird prizing. Most of the time, Sparkling Crystal will cover one or the other, the metal or the water, because the grass and lightning are more plentiful and used by both. But you never know, so they're both present. For consistency, you got 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ultra Ball, 2 E-Switch. That's for taking the grass energy off of Teal Mask and onto our other players. Night Stretchers for recovery, Area 0 for that full bench, 1 Buddy Poffin to find the Hootoots early or mid game, or the Vessel for that extra energy item-based energy search in case you don't have a Crispin or you need to use a different supporter in tandem with the energy search. The aforementioned energy retrieval, and that 1 switch in case Latias EX is not available to you. Before we start digging into the eaches of card interactions, do you have anything to add?
The only thing that I would add is because the Earthen Vessel is good for Teal Mask Ogerpon, because with Crispin you have to have 2 different types of energy. With the Earthen Vessel, it doesn't have to be that way. And I have used that more than once just to be able to get that second grass energy and swing into Charizard or swing into Zoroark. So I've found it's invaluable.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that myself. A way to get to the same energy that Crispin can't let you do. That otherwise getting that Teal mask up and running would be pretty difficult to do with just Crispin. So I didn't even consider that. So that's pretty cool as a shout out. Anything else before I start getting into our setup?
Nope, you're doing good.
Sweet. Okay, so setup. This is kind of built off of what my guest is her preferred way of setting up. This is kind of what she goes for, and it looks pretty rigid when we lay it out, but as we'll explain for a second, depending on the matchup, we just kind of have Terapagos EX here as a placeholder. Because it's 2 Fan Rotom and there's 4 Nest Balls, you generally have an out, even with the Ultra Balls, you generally have that out to that Fan Rotom. I don't know if we've ever had a game where you didn't have the Fan Rotom. Maybe it's a super fringe situation.
There has been a couple of games, yeah. But usually if I don't have a Fan Rotom, I have at least one Hoothoot and Noctowl in hand just from off-rip drawing.
There you go. There's enough Hoothoots, Fan Rotoms, Nest Balls, Ultra Balls that it's pretty rare that you're going to be completely stuck without one of those at least helping you getting out. But either way, that Nest Ball into the Fan Rotom, which allows you to get the 3 colored Pokemon. My guest said she, with the 4 of Hoothoots, very generally, there's always one in hand. So most of the time, she's grabbing that 1 Hoothoot, 1 Noctowl, and 1 Ditto. With the amount of energy and free retreat supporters, Latias EX, MEW EX, it's pretty easy to get that Ditto into play to go and grab one of our attackers, depending on the situation. And obviously, you can grab whatever trainer cards you want with the Noctowl, but that's turn 2, grabbing Sparkling Crystal, Crispin, or whatever else, depending on the situation. It's pretty strong. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, just this is something that typically I'm going for the Terapagos, but again, it's so dependent on the deck that I'm playing. Usually by the first turn, like I have a decent idea what I'm playing against. And so what I turn that Ditto into, again, depends on who I think I'm facing.
So now we'll look at the different outputs. We kind of went over them, but we'll discuss the combos that get to our different cool attackers that make this deck so strong. My personal favorite is this Wellspring Ogerpon inclusion. Technically, you don't need the Sparkling Crystal. You could attach for turn that first turn and then have Crispin to utilize the secondary attack. But the cool combo of the Sparkling Crystal with both Wellspring and Pikachu EX is both of them, their cool attacks require you to discard energy. If the Sparkling Crystal's on there, you're only having to discard the 2 other energy that's being used, which means a second Crispin allows you to, in quick succession, utilize the attack several times, where a lot of the strength of this deck comes from. But we can look at...
really quick, do you think that Wellspring discards energy? Because you shuffle it into the deck. It
shuffles it in. My bad. Yeah. So misspeak on my part. My brain just conflated the 2 effects. At the end of the turn, the energy is in a place that is harder to get back onto it, and Crispin helps alleviate the situation of both situations. You're right, that Wellspring Ogerpon is shuffling them in, not discarding them, so technically you can Wellspring mask a little more often than the Pikachu X, but depending on where you're at in the game, sometimes you want to not have more cards going back into the deck because you're trying to draw into something else. Maybe you're struggling to find a Clefairy against a Dragon Bolt, and this is super like high level play, but you might rather have stuff leaving the deck so you're more likely to draw back into it. Maybe not with this deck, it's heavy search, but just something to consider in very weird different situations. So
yeah, this deck is heavy on the search. I did pretty recently have a game where I got the Wellspring in the active, and it was like turn 2, my opponent was knocked out because he didn't have any benched Pokemon available. So that was pretty cool to do because of that card. And
just to build off of that, the ability for Wellspring to hit that 100 active, 120 to the bench means against your setup decks, Gardevoir, Hydreigon's now getting better, and the big contender Dragon Bolt is
it was a Dragon Bolt, yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty crazy because most of the time they're just trying to throw down their 70 HP guy, their their Badoo and just Badooing and praying. But this deck, while it utilizes items, can mostly ignore that. If you have that Noctowl already in hand from the first turn, being able to evolve, grab the Crispin, Sparkling Energy, and swing without the reliance of the items means you're kind of ignoring that. That's one of the things I enjoy about my Zacian deck. I can do similar things, not as consistently, but similar things to ignore the item lock. So if you're a person who's hating this Badoo item lock era, this is not a bad deck to consider to get around that. As we've established, Wellspring Ogerpon EX is great for setup decks because it's getting 2 prizes off of hitting 2 of them, be the 2 routes, the only 2 Dreepy they have in play, and really hard for those decks to come back after that. Dragapult, more so. Gardevoir has a couple more outs to play better around that, but as I've seen, Dragapult really struggles when they're hit with that. Are there any other situations that you've pushed the Wellspring to be useful? I know Sob, it can be weird. And
yeah, Sob has come into play a couple of times, but that's usually when I'm stuck. Like, I'm bricking a little bit, but I do have the Wellspring I'm able to boss up something that they don't want in the active, and I Sob, and it's a lot harder for a lot of decks to get that Pokemon they don't want in the active out of the active. And so I have time to look for something that'll get me out of the situation that I'm in.
Is it this deck or a different deck where your Sob allowed you to do that 20 extra damage that you were able to combo into other things to do cool stuff? Or am I conflating with something else?
I can't quite remember. You might be thinking of Belly Bolt.
Badoo into Belly Bolt. My bad. I'll cut this part later. I'll cut that out later then.
Yeah, you're good.
Moving on from Wellspring Ogerpon EX, then I want to look at Pikachu. That's a big guy that when it first came out, I tried really hard to make a deck that consistently utilized it. I had like a Joltik thing going on I enjoyed, but at the end of the day, Pikachu EX's 300 is big and strong, and its ability is pretty useful, but only being able to use 300 as its only attack out in a deck can get you stuck. But using it as an out here, comboed with other things, Pikachu EX just kind of shines. So here we have the Sparkling Crystal Crispin, Sparkling Crystal covering 1. This is potentially a turn 2 attack if you have all the right pieces, or a turn 1 going second attack if you have all the same pieces, hitting for that 300. And like I mentioned before, this specific attack discards the energy, but a second Crispin means you're swinging again, or you're attaching for turn, Teal masking, and energy switching if you have those pieces as well, just to attack again, and that's pretty cool. The example I was going to bring up would have been Goldingo, that was 260 HP Pokemon, and even this upcoming Team Rocket Mewtwo 280 Pokemon, one-shotting those looks pretty strong in my opinion. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think Pikachu is definitely my biggest hitter against the Goldingo deck. I mean, I can't really do too much with Mew with that one, just because I have to discard the energy. I don't have many ways of getting the energy back into my hand, and then I don't have much opportunity to get it just back into my deck in general. Teal Mask Ogerpon hits for Goldingo has resistance against his attacks, so that's not good. And Terapagos just doesn't hit across the board. Like, you can max get it up to 240, which is 20 shy of hitting it out, and the Crown Opal doesn't work because it's only against basics, and Goldingo's an evolution. So Pikachu's definitely my biggest hitter against that.
Yeah, I didn't even consider the lack of other attackers against it. So I will pray whoever is playing this list and has that Pikachu EX prized against a Goldingo. But if it's a set, you got them in game 2 or 3 too easy. So moving on, we can look at Clefairy EX here. With the 2 energy attack cost, the Crispin or the aforementioned Teal Mask EX energy switch to set it up is pretty consistent and easy to do. It's the catch-all when you're playing against these dragon lists that are pretty strong. Dragon Bolt's on top, and Raging Bolt, its stocks are lower, but it's still there. When you're trying to 2-2-2, it can be kind of difficult with this list. This is an assumption I'm making, but getting that consistent 2 prizes there you have the Blood Moon to finish off at the end with a gust. Any comments on the Clefairy EX?
Yeah, no, I mean, Clefairy EX, I definitely have to be careful when I put it out and if I'm able to just use it that turn, because, I mean, they're scared of it. They target it pretty quickly. So hoping that the Clefairy EX isn't prized and knowing when to put it down is probably my biggest struggle with that. But, you know, once I hit the right moment, then usually I'm able to take them down fairly easily. And if not, if Clefairy is prized for some reason, then I do have the little Fan Rotom there in the bottom right corner of this extravaganza we got going on that gives a little bit of chip damage, because usually one of us has a stadium out at that point, and so I'm able to, you know, knock it down a couple pegs and then able to sweep in with whatever attacker I do have set up.
The ability to hit for 70 HP with a one prizer does this deck like wonders. If I'm playing against this deck, I think 2/2/2 prize trade, but if this deck is struggling to get a bigger knockout, doing a lot of damage and then cleaning up with the 70 and then forcing the opponent to either take the one prize going on that odd prize trade or having the gust to continue the two prize trade, it's just a really strong out. It would have taken me quite a few games to get as an out if I was playing the deck. So something to really consider. It's been used successfully against me playing Hopsashian, and if we're using the Pikachu EX Severe against those setup decks with the Dragapult, Gardevoir, etc., that last 70 damage with the Fan Rotom is pretty useful. So any other comments on that one?
No, I think you got it.
Too easy. Rolling in with the Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. Another one that I didn't discount it as much of the Fan Rotom, but I just kind of chalked it up as a draw support energy acceleration. But with Zard, stocks are on the down low, but it still exists and still strong. The ends deck is getting bigger, and I keep running into high Dragon decks on the ladder. Hitting the weakness with grass as an attacker is pretty strong. The energy switches say, hey, we can get the energy off and onto other people's as a combo, and the energy retrieval is you have 4 grass, if 2 of them's in the discard. That's a great way to grab the grass, grab the other energy you need, attach return on another attacker, Teal Dance, energy switch. That's 2 the energy you need to start swinging, and that's a pretty strong combo in my book. Any more comments for that Teal Mask?
No, it's just a great addition to the deck. I would be lost without it.
Similar boat to MEW EX is a one of the restart as a drawing till you have 3. If your hand's low is always good. The free retreat's always good, but it is not that difficult to get the 3 energy on here. It is slightly more difficult than these other decks that can utilize that sparkling crystal, but technically, if you have the E-switch to get a energy off Teal Mask Ogerpon, and you have a Crispin in hand, that can technically set it up all at one time, and being able to copy other people's attacks is pretty strong depending on the situation. Against Dragapult, that's pretty solid. When we test these decks against an Hopsashian, the MEW EX would Brave Slash, just continuing a 2 prize trade, and I'll turn it over for any other interesting MEW EX plays you might have.
I mean, that was the one I was going to bring up. That was the most common one that I've done, is Brave Slashing against Hopsashian. Beyond that, I don't think that there's been many that I have genome hacked. So yeah, it's definitely a unsung hero in my deck. I kind of just keep him on the bench for the draw support. If I'm not able to find, like if my Latias is prized, for example, and one of my Pokemon gets knocked out, I put this guy in the active because I know it can retreat him and go into my attacker to swing back. But yeah, important. I don't use genome hacking super often, but when I do, it's usually game ending.
Some other examples I might bring up: if you're on the odd prize trade, and your opponent only has 1 prize card left, genome hacking knocks out Charizards. Similarly, the attack of Petron EX, late game, copying that will knock out that Petrunt. And just keep on a lookout. Some of these support Pokemon have pretty devastating attacks that they will forget about, and they'll bench it, and you can just MEW EX, put that 2 prizer in, and win games that way if your Bloodmoon's giving you trouble. So, loving MEW EX here. We've already talked about the Fan Rotom, so I'll take a step back. And any parting thoughts away from all the eaches we've gotten into with this deck?
Just that It's a little bit to get a hold on. I admit when I first looked at this deck, like towards the start of this video, when I was going over, just it's a lot to look at. There's a lot of pieces that aren't super numerous, but they're very important, and it does affect me if they're prized. I'm not saying that's different from any other deck. Like A-Specs, for example, everybody's got an A-Spec in their deck these days, and if that's prized, it's probably slowing down a whole lot. But this one, that is only more important, and I have to be conscious of what I have at all times, because if I'm not, that could be just the end of it.
And that might be my call of action. If you're a beginner or even an intermediate player trying to play this kind of deck, now is a great time to learn prize checking, or at least to get used to checking your deck for resources. Because if you're not doing that already, it's pretty easy to play this game casually and not make that a skill you have, and I still need to get better at it myself. But check your deck. This is a very, very combo heavy deck. If your pieces are there, they're good and strong, but the last thing you want to do is get halfway through one of these combos and realize, oh, I don't have an E-switch, or oh, that stadium isn't there, so I can't use these big bench attacks, and et cetera, et cetera. So just that's my call to action. Hey, learn how to deck check a little bit. It'll make you that much better of a player. So one last time, I'll turn it back over to you for any parting comments.
No, I'm happy with what we covered.
Sweet. So I'm excited to put this deck out. I don't have time to play a new deck all the time, and I wanted to pull, respectfully not an expert, but someone who's put way more time in this deck than I have. And rather than lay this deck out and make a lot of guesses, I'm glad we were able to get a little bit more insight than me making educated guesses on reading cards that anyone could do. So thanks for joining me in my video today.
Yeah, happy to help.
All right, everyone, that's it. If you play this deck, or if you have questions about anything, pop them in the comments. We will answer them, or go test and find the answers. So thank you all so much, and have a great one.